All right. So I'm just trying to get in the way. Okay. So everyone, I am so excited. We have Isha on today and
Isha.
Isha on today. And Isha and I are part of a coaching group together, and that is how we met. And I think that you guys are going to be so delighted to hear her speak. We have her for a shorter amount of time, so we're getting started a little bit early. And we probably aren't going to be able to cover all the amazing things that she could teach us today, but she has an incredible background. She's kind of like me, where she's got lots of different things. She's been a psychologist for a number of years, and now she's a coach, and so she uses that backbone of her education along with life education and other somatic trainings. And I'm going to have her introduce herself to you, because she just has such a way with words and communicating what she does in such a beautiful way.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for having me on here today. Yes, I just wanted to share a little bit about myself. Um, I I began sort of this journey. Well, I was in, I did my training in clinical psychology, but then really began to understand the mind-body connection, or the oneness of the mind-body, and understanding myself as an energy being when I got sick after my daughter was born. And after my daughter was born, I I began to have symptoms of PTSD, and I was not somebody that had ever identified as someone with trauma, because I had worked with trauma for years, and the stories that people were telling me didn't match up with my own history. At least that's not how I perceived it. And then as I began to do my own inner work, I realized that there was so much more here that I had not looked at. And then I got into somatic psychotherapy, because from my own clients, I was noticing like something is happening in the body, and talking about it is not getting to it. So I began to like leave traditional psychology behind. And then in those 4 years that I was in my certification training, it was like layer upon layer upon layer of self-discovery, and really seeing how deep what I was holding was, how deep in my body it resided. And so that really opened my eyes to what we hold on a daily basis, and how um, we call certain things, oh, this is my personality, but it actually wasn't personality. It was like survival patterns. It was like ways of being in the world that I had adopted from, like, just trying to navigate my early environment, or like my relational templates and things like that. So it totally blew my mind about everything that was in there. And since then, I've been wanting to support other people in uncovering and unveiling the real self that is underneath all of the ways that we protect ourselves. Because it was only after I began healing my personal trauma that I began to get into some of my ancestral trauma, and also really uncovering my own intuition, and really honing that as a skill that I use now to serve my clients, and use it to be in touch with myself, and to love myself, and to figure out what I need from moment to moment. So it's been a real gift to me, that work. Yeah, and also, you know, I'm thinking of concentric circles, and sort of the outer circle being the systemic trauma that we experience as women, as people of color, and in all of our intersectional identities, peeling off that layer as well, which has felt sort of like the deepest layer to me. Yeah. So that's it.
It's so wonderful to hear, because so many of us who have worked with different practitioners that are more in the mainstream, more allopathic, you know you gain a lot of benefit. And then you end up sometimes feeling sort of stuck or stalled, or like, okay, well, I've talked through these stories before. When can I let go of these stories? When can I just be free of them? When can I allow myself to not identify so clearly with these patterns, these behaviors, this person who was 10 years old or 20 years old or whatever, right? And so I love how you said, like all of a sudden you sort of found yourself in this place and you're like, wait, how did I get here? And
Mm.
really, there's so much there regardless, because I don't know if you heard her say this, but she talked about her, the ancestral trauma. And a lot of us in the healing realm, trauma is like a big deal. And many of us are still trying to figure out how to release our trauma, how to transmute it, how to transform it into something that, makes you more of who you are for the better. And so could you just speak a little bit more about this idea of ancestral trauma and of like epigenetics and the kinds of things that people are dealing with, and if they're dealing with them at that personal level, how they might not be able to deal with more of the collective level, and how they might tune out and then they aren't really helpful to the grand scheme of things. So it's like a good thing to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's several ways that ancestral trauma gets transferred. One of them is epigenetics, and basically the idea is that trauma produces changes in like the blood, the brain, the ova, the ovum, right, sperm and egg, and that these changes can cause gene expression changes, right? Or these shifts can cause traumas can cause gene expression changes. To simplify it, I'll just talk about like a mouse model that was used to show this. They basically created they separated baby mice from their moms at a too young age, and these babies developed separation anxiety. And then these rat babies or mice babies with separation anxieties then had children or babies, and the babies then had separation anxiety even though they hadn't experienced it themselves, right? So this transfer, whether it's energetic or like through the epigenetics, was coming through. And what they've found is like so far they've done 7 generations, and it's passed down through 7 generations. And there's differences between how it's passed down between males and females, but it's basically these responses are adaptive. They're adaptive traits. They help us survive uncertain environments. They help us deal with stress. But the problem is that our environments change, and sometimes we have, like, for example, I think about things that my grandparents or great grandparents survived, droughts and hurricanes and things like that I may not experience in the same way. But I'm reacting, my system is reacting to my daily life in old ways that no longer apply, right? And if I'm not aware of that, then I'm wondering, why the heck am I having this reaction? When I think about the trauma of colonialism, when I think about the trauma of slavery that went on for hundreds of years, and then systemic oppression, which is still, as we know now, alive and well today, it's like, how is that accumulated over the years? Because previous generations haven't had the privilege and the space to really deal with trauma. So it's like, when you think about this epigenetically, it's like it accumulates every generation. There's more. And so that people who are alive today are carrying a massive load. And we're not only carrying that massive load, but we experience our own traumas, right? We grow up in this world and we get hurt in all of these various ways. And so that is sort of front and center. Our personal traumas are front and center. And when we are able to see through those more clearly, then we can begin to work with the ancestral stuff, because we're aware of like, okay, what's ours? What's ours? And then what is beyond this lifetime?
I find all of this to be super fascinating because, again, we live in our minds. A lot of us think that that's how we operate. We should operate only from our minds. And we forget that we're a body as well. right? There's like a disconnect. We're either focused solely on our body and how it's functioning. Like, am I feeling gassy? Am I feeling bloated? Is it too heavy? Is it, versus like, how is my body really doing? And how is my mind, and like, how are they connected? We look at them in parts and pieces, and that's just so evident in our culture with, you go to the doctor and you go to somebody to see stuff going on in your head. You go to somebody to see something happening in your knee. You don't go to somebody for everything, who can see the totality, right? Who can really listen and understand all the things that you're going through. And if you've tried a lot of interesting things, like I've tried different bodywork methods where they really, like, when they get into a part of your body and you start crying, and they're like, it's okay, let it go, you just let it go, it's such a different place to be. And so can you explain a little bit about this, moving from kind of the paradigm of just solely looking at it through a psychological realm, and also to like come in and look at it through this somatic experience that you've now really brought into your business and started helping women with?
Yeah. And I think that the way that I want to talk about it is like with early childhood experiences. Like when we are born, we're little energy bodies. We are just like sensing and feeling and experiencing beings, right? We don't have language. We don't have mind in the way that we understand like adult minds to be, right? We're just like absorbing from our environment. And so a lot of the experiences we have in our early lives are not verbal experiences. They're felt, they're emotional, they're energetic. And then we come into our adult lives and we have reactions to things. And again, we are wondering, why am I reacting to this? And some, some memories don't have words attached to them. And in the field of trauma, this is true for a lot of traumas that even happen when we are capable and have capacity for language. So when we experience trauma, we don't necessarily experience it in that rational part of our brains. Our nervous system runs through our whole body, as we see in all of the medical diagrams. And, we experience contractions in our muscles when we experience psychological pain. So the psychological pain is not happening in here, it is happening in here. We contract, we tighten, right? When we get scared, like we hold tension in our bodies. And if we're in environments that are damaging in a chronic way, right? Where the oppression or where the pain is repeated and chronic, then we're going to be experiencing those contractions over a long period of time. And it even changes how you hold your body. I can read bodies, I can look at bodies, and I can tell you the kinds of traumas that you experience based on your postures, the way you hold your energy in your body. So it does actually change the shape of your body. I remember like, just with my children, watching them, even sometimes when I get angry at them and I notice like little twitches that they make and little, how they hold their breath in that moment, like over a longer period of time, this is what's happening. We are tightening, we are holding our breath, we are bracing. And then when we brace chronically, it becomes our normal. It becomes what is normal for us. And then we wear it like it's like a suit that we wear, but it's not the real us. It's not the real you.
I love this because as a homeopath, a lot of times I will be asking questions, they'll tell me about when the back pain started. Maybe there was a car accident or whatever, but then I am always asking about what else was happening during that time? What else was happening? And they'll say, well, my mother died, or I had this experience with, I lost this relationship, or I had, whatever it is. And then they'll say, oh, like they don't even realize how the things could possibly be connected.
Yes. And your body has a mind, right? There's a term called body mind, because your bodies have their own sense of timing, And in terms of timing, I say to people, your body, psychologically speaking, like this operates on chronological time, right? And so it's like, oh, well, that happened in the past, that stays in the past, leave it in the past. But your body doesn't understand past, present, future. In fact, it holds all of your past in the present. If it's unresolved, it's happening in the present, right? Things that show up in your relationship, like defenses and protective mechanisms and pushing away and pulling towards you. Those are things that happened in the past, but that are operating in the present right now.
Yeah. And so for those of you who couldn't see her because you're just listening, she was talking about the mind. Because you had circled your mind and you were talking about the mind for a while. Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation because as somebody who really picks up on energy, right? I've decided to call myself the energy alchemist. Like, this is so fascinating to me because I see this with my clients as well. And the question that I would have for you, with all of your experience as a psychologist and now as a somatic practitioner, like, how do you help people realize they've experienced trauma when they've suppressed it so much? Like, I think that there's this idea of trauma, because I've experienced it myself, where I've been looking at things and I think, well, my level of trauma is really so benign compared to other people's level of trauma. But as you sort of mentioned, if I don't clean up my own trauma, I'm really not going to be as helpful in the world and be able to show up as the person I want to show up, because there's this stuff. So how can you help people maybe consider that there might be traumas worth exploring or letting go or whatever, even if they're not really sure that they're there?
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird question, I know. But.
No, and I'll just share like what I often experience. People come to me with depression and anxiety, right? Typically. And we start to poke around into their history. Oh, this and that. And so I ask about their childhood. No, it was great. My parents divorced and this and that. And talk casually about it. And then we start to slow things down, start to slow things way down. And you start to, wait a second, what just happened there? Can you pause? Can you feel what is happening? Can you bring your breath to that place? And when you start to really pay attention, it is really about like this, like subtle discrimination of shifts of energy in your body. When you become attuned to them, it just becomes a whole different way of being in your body, of operating from your body. And sometimes little tremors want to happen, right? And it's like, okay, the energy wants to move, then move. I mean, people learn this language with me. And this is sort of what my biggest mission is, to help people learn this language of the body so that they can be in the world and operate in the world in a different way. Because what it does is allows you to be present, to be in life, to be in your energy, to express yourself fully, to not be in the story of your trauma, to be like alive. Because trauma is something that pulls at our aliveness, right? It sort of like diminishes the capacity that we have to be like in our energy and in our power, especially, right? We hold this pain and we hold it and we hold it and we hold it, and we're contracted all around it. And especially like I work with healers and other coaches and spiritual entrepreneurs and leaders, because I was in I did my PhD over 6 or 7 years. I worked with tons of people and I had no idea that I was holding this stuff. And when I was able to alchemize my own pain into power, then I was only able to take people as far as I had gone. And I think that's really important, that we need to be able to, when I hadn't worked through my trauma, I wasn't able to really go into some deeper places that I hadn't gone. I just didn't have the experience of it. But when I went really deep and really profoundly into what was plaguing or ailing me, then it's like, okay, I can take you there now. I can support you. But before that, I couldn't. And I didn't realize that I couldn't. So it's like your work as a healer, as a coach, gets better when you do your inner work, just as it is for, people in activism. I've supported activists for a long time too. It's like, a lot of the ways that we do activism is replicating systems of oppression. Like we operate from a place of scarcity, or we're, there's power struggles, or we're like pushing instead of like working from an embodied, slower, more compassionate place. So this work means everything to me. It's really transformed my whole life, and how I parent my children, how I come into my relationships, how I express myself personally and as an entrepreneur.
I know this because I've been able to watch her, and I was super excited to have you come on. So, one of the things that you mentioned is this idea of movement and the breath. So like, as people, you're able to see almost like, oh, you're holding even maybe this kind of trauma, right? You're able to actually see that, and then you're asking them to sort of move with it. Can you explain a little bit about what this experience is like when somebody is going through the healing process of, going there and trying to actually release the things that are stuck within the muscles, within the...
So movement, breath, and voice are the foundations of releasing these traumas. So breath, a lot of us breathe only half as deep or a quarter as deep as we can. And the deeper you breathe, the more you feel. And so I support people into getting into more emotion, because we are not comfortable as a culture. And this is part of the culture of like whiteness, of embodied whiteness, is that we're very emotional, right? This country is very emotional. And yet we don't respect or honor or even talk about emotions very well. And so the breathing, the deeper breathing, helps us create more space for feeling, sensing in the body. So that's step one. And step two, and it's not in order, but it's like, the part of the pieces here. Movement, right? What movements? So we're often like lead our bodies from our head. Okay, so I want to raise my arm. I raise my arm. But what if you allow the body to move organically? Sometimes I put on a piece of music and I say, move from an intuitive place. Move to the intelligence of the music. Don't tell your body what to do. Let your body determine what it wants to do. And so the body becomes the boss, right? And so that's a beautiful experiment, because oftentimes when we allow our body to make the choice of how it wants to move, it starts to do things that we don't necessarily want it to do. And part of that is tremoring, right? Tremoring, shaking, right? Working trauma through the nervous system, right? Shifting it inside of the body. So that's the movement piece. And voice. So many of us have throat blocks. We have expression blocks. I myself have been working on my throat block for a long time. And, when we breathe, right, we often, right? But what if you breathe, right? Just that alone is already, you're creating a vibration in your body, and you're beginning to like work that out through your voice. When I used to work in person, I used to touch people and say, what sound do you want to make? Or when people are having a memory, what does that memory sound like? And people start to make guttural noises, and noises that, again, like we're conditioned to like, oh, don't do that, or that's embarrassing. But when you start to do it, like stuff starts to come out. Maybe a scream comes out, or maybe a no comes out, like bigger sounds. And that often kind of connect to some of our childhood experiences. And alluding to something that I said earlier about like often some of our memories are pre-verbal. that's a big one. When we start to make sound, we start to connect to some of those pre-verbal memories. I've had channelings where ancestor sounds come through, like that is not my voice, right? But there is sort of ancestral sounds coming through. So we hold all of that wisdom, like both the traumas of our ancestors, but also that resilience in our bodies. But we can access the resilience when we are working through our trauma, because it takes a tremendous amount of courage to do so.
I think this is so great because we don't talk about these things. I mean, just like you said, we're a very angry, sort of emotional, irrational kind of country, but we don't actually know how to name our emotions. We don't know where, like, we could say if we're angry, we could say if we're maybe happy or sad. And
Mm-hmm.
that seems to be our limited vocabulary for what we feel. And so, yeah, I'll talk to my clients about the feelings wheel, just to kind of like, let's try to open ourselves up to the fact, like, well, maybe the anger is coming from disgust. Maybe we're disgusted with ourselves. Maybe we're feeling shameful. Maybe we're and what is underneath that? And what is underneath that? Because that is not, I didn't grow up talking about this. You
Yeah.
know, you have to get it together. You have to be seen and not heard. You have to, not be trying to share what's going on or be emotional as a child, because you're supposed to be, good. Right?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate this, and this idea of, I think part of what is sort of a relief to me, and I think maybe other people could see it this way as well, is that it isn't all just you. And if you are okay with the fact that there is history there is something deeper than you could possibly truly understand, and just allow it to be, and allow it to either release or change or inform,
Yes.
instead of it having to be this bad thing that you have to sort of keep under wraps, and and then that causes the anxiety and the depression and the worry and the and so I really appreciate you bringing this up, and I really appreciate that this is the kind of healing work that you are doing, and that we as people who are interested in growing in wellness and in intuition and connecting to the spiritual, like, we have access to people who are doing this kind of work. We might not be ready, but some of us are, and knowing that there are people doing this work like you is really quite um it's quite exciting, because you could stay in this limited place of, these are my options. I can go and I can have medication. I can go and I can do some talk therapy. I can go and I can work out and lift heavy weights, or, maybe you're into karate or kickboxing, like, to get it physically out, because you intuitively know you need to get it out. But to have this other option available, I think it's great for people to start to hear about it and then hopefully experience it for themselves. So, I know that you have something coming up. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. I have a 5-day training coming up next week. And it's basically, I'm basically going to be talking a little bit more about what I'm talking about today, really highlighting the main points of my one-on-one coaching program, my 6-month coaching program called Amplifier. And it's for, healers, leaders, entrepreneurs who are really wanting to do their own inner work in order to, like, amplify their businesses, step into their leadership more deeply, however they define leadership. Again, because of my own experience of like, you can take people deeper when you do your own work. And, my work is about the bigger picture, about when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. Healing for me, or coming back to our wholeness, our inherent wholeness, is like, it ripples out into the world. It ripples into our intimate relationships, our relationship with ourselves, the deeper it is, the more compassionate it is, more loving, and the more loving we are towards ourselves, the more space we have for other people. And what pains me so much is like how we, especially with women, how we assault ourselves in our own mind, how we like don't think of ourselves as worthy, or how we judge and criticize ourselves, and we're like, we're not enough, or we're too much. And those are the things that are like no, let's not do that anymore. We can't do that anymore. We have so much more power than that, and I want to connect women to that power. So the training next week is really like going over the main points of my program, talking a little bit about what I talked about today, and you will provide the link to that, to sign up to that. And when you sign up for the link, you get an alert when I go live, and you'll also get the replays at the end of the week and some of the worksheets, all of the worksheets actually that are part of it.
So I would highly, if you're interested, sign up. You can sign up through her Instagram. So I put her Instagram up there. Her website won't have this as easily accessible as her Instagram, so you can check that out. Now, one thing I'd like to kind of reiterate about what you just sort of ended with is, as a homeopath, we're always talking about this suppression. And so thinking about and suppressing is what causes the ailments, right? So like as you're going through something that's really intense, really tough, and you don't allow yourself either to express it or voice it or really experience it, that is what we call as a suppression. And that is what is going deeper into your body and getting stuck. And so having this ability to work through it as it's coming up and actually engage with your body in a loving, gentle, kind way, and where you're allowing yourself to let it go, through this physical, mental, and emotional process, you're going to save yourself from so much anguish than if you keep deflecting, if you keep hiding, if you keep doing the same patterns that you've already been doing, right? I keep telling people in this group and just all of my clients that I work with myself, it's like, you didn't sign up to do this because you wanted the same outcome, right? It's tough. It's not easy. Like even doing this work, which is going to be so amazing, should they try it, it's going to challenge them to stop in those moments, and put down the wine, put down the coffee, take a breath, move your body, yell, scream, whatever, you actually obviously have the methods, but just, allowing yourself those moments to really be in it instead of avoiding is going to save you so much time and stress. And I'm going to say something, even though it's just extra, but as somebody who finally realized how connected my emotions were to my body, I find it so fascinating because I like got so angry and I screamed so loud and then I couldn't move my neck. And it was like, oh, I got so, I don't know what you call it, so riled up. And this is like a decade or so ago. And I was like, this is it. This is it. I decided to get myself so turned out that like now I can't even, like I couldn't move my neck. And my anger was lodged in my neck. And so just allow yourself to see those things and actually take them in. And yes, you might go see a practitioner who, like a chiropractor who isn't believing that story, or a doctor who doesn't believe, and that's okay. But don't ignore what you know for yourself to be true just because somebody else doesn't understand it. So is there any other last words before I know you have to go on with your day?
No, I think I feel complete. I mean, if you want to know more, then come to my 5-day training. I think that's probably the I'm really going to be pouring it all out there. So I'm not holding back.
No.
Yeah, if you want more, go get more there. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, Thank you so much. We are so lucky to have you, and good luck with your training next week.
Yes, thank you so much, Mary. This was beautiful.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.